everybody. We are so sorry we're late. Poor old Dee got tied up, so she got held up. So very many apologies. But we have had Dee Scott from Positive Response Dog Training. She's actually in the same state as me, up the road from me, about an hour away. But we are going to be talking about assistance dogs today. We'll actually mention also it is Melbourne Cup Day, which is pretty much a national holiday here in Australia. So I actually forgot all about that when we booked this as well, Dee. But thank you for joining us. Anybody watching this, if you're watching on Facebook, we can't see your names. So the best thing to do is to allow StreamYard to use your name. So if you look at that link I've just shared, it's streamyard.com/Facebook. That will allow us to see your names if you have any questions for Dee. And Dee, actually, I'll leave that up for a bit longer. Dee, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. We got here in the end.
Apologies for the delay.
That's okay. These things happen. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. Keeping very busy.
Yeah, for sure. We're talking about assistance dogs today, but obviously we've got a global audience. There'll be people watching us on the replay, but from all around the world. So we won't be talking specifics about laws and particular countries or what have you. But tell us. I mean, we've talked about this in the interview. I don't think you've been on yet, actually, but we'll go over this a little bit anyway. What is an assistance dog?
So an assistance dog is a dog that is certified and under legislation, and that actually assists the handler or the primary handler, is the person with the disability, in their day-to-day lives.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah. And can anybody have an assistance dog, or what do you need to what criteria is there for being an assistance dog, or for actually having an assistance dog?
So the general criterion is that a medical doctor has deemed that a dog, an assistance dog, would be suitable as a medical tool to assist to alleviate that person's disability for whatever reason. And generally speaking, that medical letter is the start of the process for that person.
Yeah. So when we say disability, what we're not just talking about, people might say disability, it's somebody in a wheelchair, or somebody that's physically disabled. It doesn't necessarily mean that, though, does it?
No, look, it's disability defines pretty much, there's a wide spectrum. So it's anything from people who perhaps have PTSD, people who do have a physical disability or a mobility issue, trauma, any kind of trauma that has occurred in that person's life, where an assistance dog can help to alleviate that trauma.
Yeah, for sure. And so if I wanted to say I want an assistance dog, what can I just pick my dog up, my Joe Bloggs dog, or do they have to have do they have to have special character traits?
Look, it's really important to understand that for a dog to become an assistance dog, it does have to have the right temperament. And we've popped a lot of information on our website, because a lot of the questions we get are things like, is my dog suitable? Is this breed suitable? My dog is 4, 5, 6, 7 years old. What can I do? I've got a dog. I've got a very strong bond with that dog. So temperament is really important, and it is critical that when we do what we call an initial assessment, we're looking at the temperament of the dog. So it's not just, is my dog happy to be with me? We're looking at a dog that is able to face social outings and things in a cool, calm, collective manner, that has no anxiety. When a dog is anxious, they're struggling to look after themselves, let alone try and look after their handler. So these are some of the things that are really important to help owners identify. So look, we have some people who've come to us, and they've started their dog on a program, and the dog might be 2 or 3 years of age, and the dog has a really great temperament and needs a little bit of tweaking, and we're able to certify those people, within a reasonable time frame. But then there are other people that will go out and just buy a puppy. So again, if that puppy doesn't have that suitable temperament, we're already starting on the back foot, and it can make it very, very difficult. So it's not that it precludes a lot of dogs, but it is important to understand that, you've got to have the right qualities. If a noise goes off and the dog startles and then recovers, fantastic, because that's normal for everybody. But, if this huge noise goes off and the dog's hiding behind the owner's legs and trembling, then that's not the right dog for the program. And that dog is not able to be certified to go out into public. There may be some dogs who only need to assist their owners at home. And we've gone into homes and helped to identify more tasks and to actually train some more specific tasks, but they don't necessarily want the dog to go out in public with them. They need the dog for at home. And that's, again, different because the dog's already habituated to its home environment, it's comfortable, can work within that environment, so we don't necessarily need to be public accessing.
Yeah. And oh, sorry, was there a bit of feedback then? Are you getting feedback? Oh, it's my dogs. Are you okay? Were you getting feedback then from me? No, it's stopped now anyway. I can't hear it. No, that's all right.
No.
Yeah. So I'm looking at my dog and I'm thinking, well, I want that to be my assistance dog. Obviously, a doctor's not going to say, yes, your dog can be. They can say, yes, you are capable of having an assistance dog or you need an assistance dog. But then the next step is finding someone such as yourself, I guess, that is able to help you through the process.
100%. And that is so important. A lot of people out there think that because the doctor has given them a medical letter that their dog is suddenly an assistance dog, and that is definitely not the case. The doctor does not have the qualifications or the ability to look at a dog and to say, yes, that dog, is suitable or is even trained. So it is important. On our website, we've actually popped up like a free little assessment that people can do just to help them, to give them a guideline. And it just takes them through a few basic questions. So we're looking at the basics of behaviour. So even if they answer no to 1 or 2 questions, it's just a matter of giving them a bit of a guideline as to, look, this is what is required. So, look, my dog's okay. It's passed. I've got all these questions as a yes, but I've got 1 or 2 questions as a no. So then I might send the office an email and say, look, is there something that's trainable? Recognising that if a dog does have acute anxiety, for example, we're all really aware that anxiety is not trainable. Okay, it is a medical condition for a dog too. So, but, where the dog perhaps barks to alert but then doesn't stop, they're the sorts of things that are very trainable.
Yeah. So I liked what you said too about the if a dog is going out in public and it's anxious, it can't look after the owner, it's got to look after itself first, or it's probably the reverse, isn't it? It's relying on the dog guardian to look after it.
That's right. Correct. Yeah. So to be a team that can access and when we talk about public spaces, we are talking about public spaces that, say, for example, a guide dog can go into. You've got guide dogs, you've got hearing dogs, and you've got assistance dogs. So it is important to understand that, we've got to proof that dog. Like, you can't just put a dog on a travelator and hope for the best. You can't pop them in the lift and just assume that they're going to be okay. So there's a lot of work that has to go into it. And it is time consuming, and the individual has to really be prepared to put in the hard yards. If you think about the amount of training it takes for a guide dog or a mobility dog or an assistance dog, for people that are procuring a dog, they're paying for a so-called fully trained dog. there's thousands of dollars that go into it. And you're looking at, generally, if you're starting from a puppy, you're looking at least 18 months to 2 years before that dog, has matured enough and is able to pass all those milestones before you then team it with a handler. So people do need to understand and appreciate that they have to put a lot of time and effort in, and because they're not trainers, we're kind of like the captain at the helm, and we're steering the ship, and we're saying, look, this is what you need to do, and this is what you need to do. And we do our best to work very closely with people. But at the end of the day, it is the individual. And unfortunately, that's why success rate may not necessarily be as high as some people. There are people out there who just think, but my dog does this and it's all wonderful. But when we actually do an assessment, we can see that there are some big holes that need to be filled.
It's interesting, isn't it? I think, people go to puppy school and their dogs maybe as puppies were sitting and dropping and coming, but if you don't keep that training up, then those skills can stop being skills.
Well, of course, it's like anybody else, isn't it? I mean, when you're teaching a child and you're raising a child, and you've got to teach it manners and how to do things, even tying a shoelace, it's not something that just happens overnight. And if you don't have lots of repetition and you're not consistent with your programs, then obviously that child can't tie their shoelaces. So it's really no different in that respect.
Yeah, you can buy lots of things on the internet these days, and some of those things are little vests that have got writing on them and might say therapy dog. You can't just slap one of these little vests that you've bought from somewhere on your dog and suddenly take it into restaurants and whatnot.
No, and this is a problem that we're having. And unfortunately, it does highlight, the industry itself and how unregulated it is. Very sadly, we had said no to a client. Her dog was actually very reactive. And about 5 months ago, one of our clients with an accredited assistance dog was in a shopping centre. And that particular dog I was just talking about, the other lady's dog, happened to be there because she had just, vests and labels all over the dog stating it was an assistance dog. And, that dog attacked our client's dog, and it was pretty traumatic. Yeah, pretty traumatic for the client and the dog. The client being who she was, thank goodness that it was actually probably that particular client, not that you want that to ever happen to anybody, managed to tackle the other dog down and restrain it, but she ended up in hospital over that. So
wow.
These are the problems that we are facing here in Australia, and I'm sure it's probably everywhere.
I'd say so. What can we do about that then? How can we stop people she's gone to you initially to probably get the help, get the training. Then you've said, look, your dog's not suitable for obvious
Correct.
reasons, but she's gone ahead and done the wrong thing. How do we stop that?
Yeah, that's $1 million question. We actually need to start with legislation and, and not just state government, but probably federal government. Really, it needs to come from the top, and it needs to be in every single state. And I'm sure that other countries have probably got the same problem we have. Excuse me, where, every state has different regulations and rules. But we actually do not have anything that can really guide and help us apart from one particular act that we work with here in Queensland. So it does make it very difficult, and also not enough education. You have some people screaming, discrimination, when it's actually they're discriminating against that particular cafe owner or shop owner because they've been asked to leave because their dog, has either eaten food off the table. And these are a lot of the complaints. I do spend a lot of my days fielding calls from irate shop owners and cafe owners and, medical centres and all those sorts of things that they call me and they say, look, this dog is growling or snapping or barking. And you're like, well, you have the right to remove that dog. Doesn't matter what legislation it's under. The dog is not an assistance dog, or the dog, if it is an assistance dog, has certainly not passed all the criterion, or has now regressed. Something might have happened. So organisations, for the most part here in Australia, do not have adequate trainers. Their trainers are not qualified. You know, they just don't seem to have any idea of how to train. And there are organisations out there, sadly, too, who just won't say no to people. So we're getting all sorts of supposed assistance dogs that technically would not pass.
Yeah.
They certainly wouldn't be passing.
It's a really interesting conversation if we compare Australia, and I imagine America's fairly similar to this too, where, well, definitely here in Australia, you know, you don't take dogs anywhere. There's some cafes that allow dogs. There's some parks that allow dogs off leash. There's some beaches that allow dogs off leash. You can't take them on public transport. You can't take them here, there, and everywhere. You take that and look at somewhere like Europe, where dogs go everywhere, and the dogs are just different with their interaction with the world, I think. So I think maybe if you live in Europe, you probably, just because of the way your dogs are a lot more welcome, therefore they're brought up a little bit differently. They're probably less reactive in many senses. I might not be explaining this right, but maybe though it would be easier for dogs that are brought up in an environment where they're already exposed to all these different things to become assistance dogs, whereas in Australia they don't have access to a lot of the things that those dogs do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and look, the problem is, you know, you've also got massive risk assessment issues in a lot of places, and that's where, and I know, having been to Europe 35 years ago was the first time I went, I was just like stunned at the amount of dogs that were.
I know.
I'm walking over German Shepherds to go and book a room.
And they're so calm though. They're not. Yeah. It wouldn't happen in Australia. They wouldn't be lying down going, yeah, whatever.
No, but the thing is too, and it's interesting because I do have a lot of other trainers that I communicate with around the world too. And it is interesting that you do say this, because there are still a lot of reactive dogs out anywhere you go around the world. So whether or not it's just simply because of lack of social exposure, or whether it's also partially genetic, because, you know, you do have breeds that have more fight rather than flight in them, or you do have dogs that for some reason these days we have as much anxiety in our dogs as we do in people. So whatever it is that's occurring, it is actually exacerbating the problem. So, you know, for Australia, and I just can only speak for our country, you can't just take your dog into a cafe, because the risk for other patrons is high if that dog doesn't have basic obedience and would be happy to just lie under the owner's feet and go to sleep. So, you know, how do we train that, and how do we tackle this problem? It is massive, but we do certainly have enough open spaces where if people really understood their dogs, they would also understand social exposure. And that's probably one of the biggest issues that I have faced over the 40 years, is that when you say to people, so is your dog socialised? And their first answer is, oh, yeah, no, he plays with my other dog at home. And I'm like, that's not social exposure. Social exposure means from a puppy that they're carried around in an owner's arms, that they go down to the local cafe, they sit outside, that, you know, the puppy is introduced to mat training. You know, they carry the puppy around, they go to the local markets, they go to Bunnings, they go to pet stores, they go to all those spaces that dogs are welcomed at. And if they socialise their puppies and give them the social exposure, so it's not just dog-to-dog exposure, it's social exposure, then we would probably start to have a lot less, you know, issues as well. But people seem to be extremely time poor, seems to be getting worse. So they buy a puppy, and while now we have vaccinations where puppies can get out a lot earlier, there are also a lot of issues around vaccinations and health. So in some places, taking your puppy out can be quite risky just due to, you know, parvo influenza and the cases there. Whereas in other places, you don't even see or hear of parvo. So, there is, I believe it's called a Novavax vaccine, which vaccinates your puppy much earlier. So social exposure, where your puppy can be on the ground and actually, in other spaces where perhaps you normally wouldn't put a puppy without vaccinations, that's now available. I just think education-wise and time-wise for people, they don't understand that in order to socially expose their puppies, they actually have to go out every single day. Who's going to do that? It's like we socially expose our children, because what do? From a very young age, we might pop them into a mother's group here or there, but then they usually go to preschool or whatever it is that people now call it. And so that's how their social exposure is encouraged and continues. Do you know what I mean? And then, as a mum, you might go to the shops, so you take the kids with you. On the weekends, you take them down the park. So, but people don't kind of think about puppies in that sense of the word as well. So it does make it difficult. We need to change the mindset of people and help them understand that social exposure is absolutely critical and not enough is being done.
Yeah. If anyone's got any questions watching, feel free to drop them in the chat. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about socialization, that phrase. And people think if it's not playing with the dog that they live with, it's playing with dogs down at the dog park, not realizing that it's actually taking them to maybe outside of a shopping centre, taking them to a park where there's kids playing footy, or just getting them out and about. And that whole, don't take them out for 4 months, as you said, you can navigate that.
You close the social window completely.
Yeah. And so then hopefully those dogs that have had the right sort of exposure, as when they're younger, are better candidates for therapy.
Yeah, without a doubt, because those dogs have, they basically have become quite bomb-proof, assuming again that they have the actual right temperament as well. But very slow exposure. We have puppies in classes that are petrified and hiding under chairs and behind owners' legs, and by week 4 they're out playing. It's all about understanding how to get that puppy slowly and carefully to come out of its shell. You've got to look at your puppy classes are literally just like going into a schoolyard. You can't just put everything into a mosh pit and hope for the best.
Unfortunately, when I had my very first puppy as a new dog owner, that's exactly what the guy did. I didn't know anything about dog training. This is years and years ago, and it was a mosh pit. And if the puppies were hiding, he's like, no, you get that puppy out of there and throw it in with the rest of them, and the dogs are bullying each other, and oh god, it was awful. Now I know what I know. I'm like, oh my god, that was just not nice. At the time, even at the time, as an ignorant person, I thought this is making me really uncomfortable.
Yeah, you feel sorry for the dogs that from the past a lot of times, because in some of those instances. But you also got to remember that if we go back 30 years. Mum was still at home. There was always somebody around. We had a lot less people and we had a lot less dogs. Now we've got a lot more people and a lot more dogs, and space has become critical. So, you've got people living in apartments. So, while the dogs might habituate to things like lifts and, things that are different for some dogs, you're still living in a very tight space. So city living, very, very different to country living. And it's so important for people, I think, to just open their eyes and to start to recognise that they need to do more in the early stages. Otherwise, you close that social imprinting window, it makes it very difficult, because you're then conditioning, but conditioning can take a lot longer.
Yeah. So basically, if somebody was watching this and their dog's older, it doesn't necessarily mean that dog can't be and I mean older than a puppy, obviously. It doesn't necessarily mean that dog can't become an assistance dog. It's just a different road.
It's a different road, and again, it's really about temperament and what the dog can cope with. I mean, why would you, when we test a dog, we test them in a local shopping area, sort of outside, like a little mall or something. If that dog can't cope in that small mall area with a few people going past and trolleys and, just a general hub of what we would consider normal, then that dog is going to really struggle. And, it's a long road. We have some clients where dogs have had a scare, for example. So we had one client whose dog, unfortunately, while I was working with that client, the dog was attacked by another dog. And she was 3/4 of the way through her, through her tests and her tasks and things. So we were really getting close. So unfortunately, she became quite dog phobic. So it added another 6 months onto that accreditation. And we actually had to start her on medication, but the medication helped to calm her down, and so she was able to learn. So we were able to overcome it. But everything's a case-by-case basis. And that lady was determined. So, every day, and I held her accountable, and to this day she will say to me, Dee holds me accountable and held me accountable. And so I would be like, have you done this today? Have you done this? Here's your checklist. I need you to tick it off. What have you done? How long? And we got her there. And this dog is doing really, really well. But every now and then you kind of see that trigger, like a PTSD, and the dog's like, occasionally we'll spot a dog, and I would say it's probably because of the type of dog that attacked her. And she will sort of pull back a little bit. So, we try our best.
Understandable, yeah. I mean, it's like driving a car and you have, maybe a white van or something nearly runs you off the road. Then every time you see a white van, you might be a little bit sort of. I mean, that's
correct.
Maybe not the best.
Yeah, you're associating. It's all associating. Yes.
Yeah, and so obviously you're going to, I'm like that with cockroaches. I see a cockroach, I'm like, yeah. Anyway, that's really interesting. So, I guess if somebody does have a dog and they really want to see if their dog can be an assistance dog, we've talked about having to do the training and then making the training kind of ongoing, not assuming that it's always going to stay there. But so. This is a question I think I asked you in the interview, but I'll ask it here anyway. How long does it take?
Yep, that's the $1 million question, isn't it? Look, it really does depend, and that's why it's so difficult to answer it. So it depends on the dog's journey. If I have a dog that comes to me, and let's just say the dog's 3 years old, has got all its basics down pat, and has, we've got a couple of self-taught tasks, then the process might only take 5-6 months, and we might have completed it. We have dogs that need to get all their basic training in first, because you can't, to pass a public access test, when you say sit, you don't only need to say it once. If you have to repeat it, then your dog is not adequately trained in basic obedience. So, we might have those people come on board where they're basically starting with a clean slate. And that, again, could, depending on the age of the dog and the dog's ability, because it's always got to do with the dog's ability and the handler's ability, that could take, for some people, 12 months to completely get to that point, or it might take 3 months. So it's really difficult to know. And one of the big things I say to people is, this dog would be a medical tool for you. And if you are absolutely determined and you are really committed to put the work in, then it should happen.
Yeah, so it's about putting the work in. What about somebody that's maybe not physically disabled but has, some sort of form of anxiety, whether it's PTSD or what have you, some sort of social anxiety or whatever it is? Dogs pick up on their emotions. They pick up on our emotions. They kind of know what's going on, don't they? Are those dogs at risk of don't know quite how to ask this, but
Becoming more anxious themselves.
Pardon?
What you mean, becoming more anxious themselves?
Yeah. So everybody's fine, mum's fine, the dog's fine, and then something happens as a trigger, mum gets anxious, dog picks up on mum, and then suddenly, rather than support, you've got the opposite effect, dog's having a freak out as well. Is that something that happens? Or?
It can. Generally speaking, and you've got to remember too that dogs read us so well. Like, we talk about body language, but honestly, a dog can read us in about 2 nanoseconds and know exactly how we're reacting.
I think they know before we do, actually. I'm sure my dogs know what I'm feeling before. Yeah.
Because they read us, and that's important to understand. They read us and they smell us. Mm-hmm. So when a lot of people go, oh my God, it's just a miracle and it's amazing. Well, it's not a miracle, because what that dog's done is its nose receptors have gone, hello, your blood sugars have dropped, your cortisol levels have risen. I need to do something. And dogs learn to respond in a particular way, which of course, when a dog responds in a particular way and then the owner reacts, for example, by holding them or cuddling them, well, that's reinforcement. So the dog goes, oh, that worked. Calmed her down or him down. Next time it happens, I repeat the behaviour. And that's why quite often dogs self-task. And then, we find that we can actually just modify those tasks, because the dog has read you, the dog has smelt you, so the dog has reacted accordingly, and then, calms the person down. So the dog's like, that worked. So I will repeat that again. And look, let's face it. I mean, as owners, we cuddle our dogs and we get that sense of relief. But, some dogs can become even more anxious or more stressed. So we do have the minority that, unfortunately, then and they can become really anxious too.
That's really interesting. So my little girl, is she in the corner there? Yeah, she is. Hang on. There she is, her little bum. She's very much like the first dog you described. So if she obviously smells something's going on, mum's cortisol levels are risen, and she knows. She's just straight up here on my lap, or she'll bail me up as I'm walking down the hallway and literally literally stop me walking and cuddle me. And yeah, it works. So she does it. Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah,
becomes self-reinforcing. So it works really well. So the dog's like, this is really rewarding, so I'll just keep repeating the behavior.
Yeah, and here I was thinking she just loved me.
Oh, people don't like it when I tell them their dogs are really love them, because let's face it, there's many dogs that would have come home with me if I said, all right, let's go, and their owner's like, oh, okay. So let's face it, I guess, if a dog's well fed and if a dog's well looked after, they'd probably go anywhere, which is why they can be so easy to rehome, sadly for us. They're off, it's like, okay, I've just got a new home. But look, as people, we all adore our dogs, and no matter, their little quirks and their carry on, that they're our dogs. And so, and I guess we see them through our eyes. So we just have to be a bit careful, when people go, oh, look, we get this all the time. Oh, look, Dee, I've got this problem, but my dog is a good dog. But I've got this problem. But my dog is a good dog. So it's almost like a lot of people are trying to reiterate that, it's not that bad, or I'm trying to tone it down a little bit. So, it's really about saying, okay, let's just stop there. So what's the actual problem you're having? All right, let's have a look at that problem in a wider scope. So we know your dog is a good dog because that's how you see your dog through your eyes, and that's fantastic. But you have a problem that's impacting either your family or is impacting the neighbours or whatever the case may be. So it's just a problem that we have to look at and do our best to address it in a way that doesn't harm the dog, doesn't hurt the dog, And, teach people too that, it's one of those things to say that we're training you, but when a lot of people don't understand what reward-based training is either. And they say, oh, but I don't want to give my dog treats. Oh, reward-based training isn't about treats. Reward-based training is about behavior. And it's about understanding behavior and understanding how to either increase or decrease that behavior. And using food is literally a financial gain in the sense of it's the dog's income, isn't it? So at the end of the day, it's no different to us. We have, we use food, but we also use money as primary for a dog. Food is primary. It's a primary resource. So if we use it, we manipulate it, we can actually alter behaviours fairly quickly. And we do it in such a way that the dog starts performing completely different behaviours. And everyone goes, wow, look at what a well-trained dog you have. It's simple science, isn't it, in itself?
Yeah. I mean, if anyone's watching and you've got any questions about assistance dogs, please ask them while we've got Dee. But yeah, I think the thing with food is a lot of people have this perception that it's bribery. And I look at it the same way as you. It's an income. You wouldn't go to work all day and not expect to get paid.
Exactly.
But yeah. So for people, I do hope somebody asks a question, but we'll see.
Maybe they've been shy.
But so you've got some resources on your website, obviously. So even if they're overseas, it's going to give them a good sort of idea of where to start. And you've got also something to help. I forget what you've got something new that's just come out.
Yes. So what we've done is we've created some online courses just to help people because, and it's not, not just for assistance dogs, it's for people that have any kind of issue. So what we've done is we've taken everyone through step by step, and there's a whole stack of different courses that we've broken down. So whether your dog's pulling on lead, whether walking is an issue, whether your dog won't drop, whatever the case may be, it's about using those resources and just working through it and taking your time. So it is literally step by step, just like you've got a trainer with you. And the whole idea of that is to give people, because again, everyone's so time poor, you can do this any time of the day or night that you're with your dog. And it's on your phone, you can carry it around, you can be sitting on the couch, click on the resources, start working through them while your dog's at your feet. You've got to feed your dog of a morning, you've got to feed your dog of the night. So it can take you through step by step where you can look and go, all right, my dog is not coming when I call it. So I'm going to step outside with a lead. I'm going to work using the program in the backyard first, then I'll work off lead, then I'll pop the lead back on, I'll take the program back out in the front yard, and I can start to use the information provided to help me get a better grip on the fact that my dog, as soon as he sees the door, he bolts for it. So there's lots and lots of things that we have created along with, that assessment for those who are thinking of putting their dogs into the program and wanting an assistance dog. So whether the dog is an adult dog or a puppy, there are those assessments there for them. And it's just important to understand that if your dog is already 6 or 7 years old, that, you got to remind yourself, if it takes 12 months and the dog is 8, so a tenure here in Australia is 3 years. So you pass a public access test, you only have your dog for 3 years, then it has to retire. So it is important to look at your dog and think, look, where is my dog in its life? So if it's only a young dog up to 3 and it's going to take me 12 months to train, that'll put the dog at 4. That's not such a bad thing. But if your dog is already 7 or 8, then you have to ask yourself, has that been fair to your dog? Because at the end of the day, it's a program that you and your dog have to go through and a lot of work. And of course, while a lot of our dogs are now living a lot longer, we do still have, atypical issues that occur with dogs, whether there's a little bit of arthritis, whether vision starts to go, hearing starts to go, all of those things that unfortunately bring that lovely old age with it.
Yeah, for sure. So that makes sense. Yeah. All right. Any final words you want to share with people?
Look, we all love our dogs dearly. Ideally, if we could all just take that extra 5 minutes in the day and sit down and look at our dog and ask ourselves, what did my dog do today? Did it just lie around on the couch all day? Has it been out? Has it only just gone for a walk all week? Has it had any social exposure? And just look at taking 20 minutes. If you're going to go to the shops because you're going to go and buy something, if you can, take somebody with you and take your dog for a car ride. Just get it out and understand that, like us, they need to get out. They need to dust off the cobwebs. They need a scent walk, popping them on a long lead and just letting them have a scent walk in a particular reserve. So just remember that, like us, your dogs, they're literally lying around all day waiting for their owners.
Yeah.
So providing them with enrichment, providing them with some training in the morning before you leave, in the afternoon when you get home, and getting them out and just looking at their day.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. All right, lovely. Dee, thank you so much for coming and doing this live. Pleasure to talk to you as always.
Thank you.
Are you having a flutter on the cup or not?
No.
No.
I was busy training a dog. That's why I was running late. No rest for the wicked up here.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much. And have a great day.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. Thank you very much for having me on.